I'm Nadine.
And I'm Shari. And we are going to demonstrate how to make kraut and cheese Beroggi.
Okay.
Nadine is going to mix the flour, and our recipe for this is 4 cups of flour with 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 cup of hot water to which 3/4 cup of milk has been added. And she is only making half a recipe, so if it doesn't look like there's 4 cups of flour in there, there isn't. But the outcome will be the same. She is going to mix this until she achieves a rather stiff dough. It looks like it's getting rather stiff. And when she has it mixed, she is going to turn it out onto the counter and knead it with 1/4 to 1/3 cup of more flour until her hands don't stick to it anymore. And it's a firm, soft piece of dough. She's just going to keep kneading and keep adding flour until it gets nice and firm. Can you mix it too much? I don't think it's not very easy to over knead it or over mix it. It looks like it's getting to the point where it will be about ready. And after she's done kneading it, she will put it on a floured board and let it rest for at least 20 minutes, but you can also let it rest for several hours. I might add that there are any number of recipes for this dough. You can find it in various cookbooks. This is just the one that we grew up with, and so this is the one that we make. This is true also of the fillings, especially the cheese filling. You can find a number of different recipes. And I suppose they all work well, but the one that we use is just the one that we like the best. You don't ever use a mixer. You can use a dough hook to do the early part of the mixing on it, but then the kneading part needs to be done by hand. Okay. We have mixed a batch so that we will continue with the rolling of it, and she will demonstrate how to roll it out. It will be, there's a lot of elasticity in the dough, and she will need to keep flipping it as she rolls it to get the desired thickness, which is about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. Okay, she's going to start rolling it out now. This dough has been resting probably for a couple of hours, and it looks like it's working quite well. And she'll be flipping it. I usually make this treat for my family at Christmas time. My sons dearly love it. Their wives not so much. They didn't grow up with it. But it is something that our mother made a lot. For one thing, they made their own cottage cheese, so they had that on hand. And a lot of times they also raised their own cabbage and made their own sauerkraut. So it was a very inexpensive meal for them to make. You try to kind of make it into a square if possible, so that you can get even sized squares out of it. When she is finished rolling, she will cut them into about 3-inch squares, 2.5 to 3 inch, kind of depending on how many pieces you can get, so that they're all approximately the same size.
Pink.
Looking good.
Now, should I get the ruler?
Rulers are not necessary. Something that I have found also works to cut them is a pizza cutter. But as you can see, a knife works very well. Now those pieces that are falling off, she's going to put a little water,
I don't need
or maybe she doesn't need water, but she's going to tape them together, paste them together, and make another square.
Oh, that's going to be a little square. That's going to be a little broggy. Okay. We don't want any. It's the back door. think it's
You try to make as much into a square as possible so that when you fold them over, you fold them into a triangle so that they will match up evenly. But sometimes we have misfits. And you know what? They get eaten as well. Okay, now we're ready to put the kraut and the cheese into the squares. The kraut, the recipe that we have for the kraut is 1 quart of kraut, drained very well, 1 onion, about 3/4 to a cup of chopped onion, and you saute this onion in about 1 tablespoon of grease. We are using bacon grease, but you can use any of your choice. And then we also add about 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, but that is optional if you don't care for pepper. Now, one of the most important things is to make sure that the little strings of sauerkraut do not come to the end of your dough, because when you cook them, if there is some sauerkraut or some cheese between those edges, they will pop open in the boiling water and you will not be happy because you will have an empty tomb. There will not be any kraut and cheese in there. And also pinching them very securely is very important as well. You depending on the size of your square, you probably use maybe a heaping tablespoon per square.
Yeah, probably.
Now we leave the kraut beroggi in triangles. The cheese beroggi, we put the 2 little ends together so that we can tell the difference once they're cooked, which ones are kraut and which ones are cheese. Or you can do it vice versa. It really doesn't matter. This is just the way our mother did it, so that's the way we do it. I have been known to make all kinds of odd shapes just to get the dough used up.
A good Mennonite tradition, I'd say.
Now there's one that would make a really nice square because she got the dough oblong. And it's something you don't try to do, but it often happens.
could be bad.
Make a square.
No,
She's persistent. She's going to get a triangle out of it.
Because you can stretch a little bit, can't you?
mm-hmm.
It does stretch. As long as you don't put a hole in it, you're okay.
This could be at the bottom of the barrel.
She's going to make a couple of more Kraut Beroggi, and then she's going to switch to cheese, because we can put about 12 at one time into the cooker.
Want to turn it on?
Your recipe for Kraut, how many burgers does that make? Approximately. A whole recipe.
A whole recipe, the 4 cups of flour, I think makes something like maybe 35 or 40
Yeah, I-
Beroggi.
35 maybe. It depends on this
Like
shape.
when I make them for my family, I usually, make one recipe of each, and I think I get around 40.
There's some pieces that want to get out.
And even as careful as we try to be when we make them, at least I'm speaking for myself, there is never a time that I don't find some Kraut at the bottom of the cooker and some cheese as well. So don't feel bad if you try it for the first time and you find they didn't all
Or
stay
the second-
closed.
Or the second time. Needed.
That's nice and dry. How do you get that dry? How do you get that
The sauerkraut. We put the sauerkraut in a colander and actually squeeze the juice out of it so that it is very dry. Otherwise, it will have a tendency to run out. Okay, let's start on the cheese now.
Oh, here it is. Okay. That's another.
Yeah, take them from the middle.
What do they do with the rest?
We take like the cheese recipe that we use is a 1 pound package of dry curd cottage cheese, 1 egg, a half a teaspoon of salt, and a 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. You just mix that all together. The consistency should be moist enough so that the cheese holds together. If need be, if you find that it falls apart, you can add an additional egg, and that will help it stick together. And that's how we pinch the sides together for the cheese. as you can see, the cheese pretty much just stays in a clump, and that's what you want. There are also a number of recipes, which I think I may have mentioned that before. There are recipes that use just regular cottage cheese. I've never tried it, but if you do use that, you have to drain the cream or the juice off of that very well in order for it to work.
She's doing it in a triangle. Right?
We make them in a triangle, but then pinch the two edges together, the two ends together.
You could do it end to end, couldn't you? You wanted a different shape to make it square, actually.
Right. If that's what I was saying, if the dough manages to come out in a rectangle rather than a square, it's easier just to fold it over and just make a square out of that one, which happens quite often when I'm doing it. I make the excuse that I only make them once a year, so I can.
Is this usually the main dish?
It is a main dish. It's hard to know what to serve with it, but maybe not as bad as Beroggi as far as making something with it.
Make it a meal. See if you would have cottage cheese dripping. How you used to do that? Making the cottage cheese yourself. No, your mom did it.
Oh yeah, our mother made her own cottage cheese, right? But they had the cows and they had the cream and everything that it took to make it.
So they put a cheesecloth and hang it.
Right. It was hanging by the sink, dripping. I can remember the first time I ate boughten cottage cheese. I thought it was absolutely gross because it was those big clumps where homemade cottage cheese is not like that. I got used to it. Okay, I think we have at least 6 of each. So now we will see if the water is boiling and proceed to cook them. Okay, we have a pot of water at a full boil, rolling boil. So I'm going to drop these Beroggi one at a time into the boiling water. And we're going to leave them in here for approximately 5 minutes. As they're dropped in, they basically go down to the bottom. But once they're done in about 5 minutes, they will start rising to the top, and that's when they're ready to take out.
Sourness of the Kraut gets so, and it's really, so it's not too overcooked, especially the Kraut.
Okay, it's been approximately 5 minutes and they are swimming on the top. So we are now going to take them out and let them drain for a few seconds. And then we're going to pour them into this pan, which has been sprayed with grease. And look, there isn't any cheese or kraut on the bottom, so she did a great job of keeping them together.
Well, the dough was behaving, and sometimes that's all that makes the difference.
So what we do next, we have about 2 or 3 tablespoons of bacon grease, which you can use a grease of your choice. But we are going to just spoon some of this onto each one and cover them so that they will not stick together. The spray that we have on the sheet will keep the bottom side from sticking, but putting a little grease on the top of these will keep the top side from sticking as well. What some people will want to fry these before they eat them. My family, they are now ready to eat, and some people put cream on them, some people put a gravy on them. My family's a little weird. We like to sprinkle sugar on them. And what my dad liked to put sour cream on the cheese. That was his specialty. I didn't like sour cream, but wanted to put something on mine, and so I chose sugar. And so my children put sugar just because I did. But anyway, if they are left over, what our mother did was serving them the second time around, she would fry them. And there would be enough grease on them that you didn't have to add any grease to the pan. You just put them in and fried them, flipped them, and ate them. Fried them rather crisp and then ate them.
Can you freeze them?
Yes, you can freeze them. We freeze them like after they're made, before they're cooked. Freeze them on a flat sheet, and after they're in the freezer for an hour or so, you can pick them up, put them in a plastic bag, and then they're ready to cook whenever you want them. So that's pretty much the finished product.
I'll go on starting.
So you know.
Okay, if there is any leftover dough, if you've run out of kraut and cheese, what our mother used to do would be to cut the strips into about maybe 1.25 1.5 inches, and then she would cut those long strips into about 1/4 inch, just little logs, and she would peel a couple of potatoes and cube them and then cook them with the dough, and then season that with some bacon grease, and then she would pour cream over that, and it was very delicious.
Is that different from prepared?
Well, if you want to have them for lunch, then you do start early in the morning, and it really takes longer to get prepared than it does to actually make them. But it usually, you have them by noon if you start in the morning, and then you make enough to have some left to fry for the next day if you're lucky.
And one more thing, rather than frying the leftover Beroggi, now with the modern convenience of the microwave, you can just put them in the microwave to reheat them, and they're pretty much just like they were the first day.